You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host as always. We're cracking into the middle of February already. We're about to start talking to some leaders in the government politics space about the election. Very exciting there. But this week I wanted to have a chat about one of those topics that I think has been coming up and will be more prevalent over the years. Those solutions about how we provide supply. And one of the people that I've met recently who I'd love to have a chat with on this podcast, and he's been very kind to oblige in providing his time, is a man called Peter Forgione, who runs Good Life Structures. Good Life Structures is an importer and provider of flat pack and modular style homes in Western Australia, granny flats. Now, I had a chat with Oliver Peterson about modular homes on 6PR a couple of weeks ago, and Peter was lively and excitable enough to jump on the radio and talk about ways that he's providing and being part of that solution as well. And I thought, hey, it's probably better to expand that listenership about this conversation and have a chat with someone who's right in it every day, supplying this to get an understanding about what the opportunities are for Western Australia, but also what the limitations are, the red tape, and just the process of how do we get these homes into the ground and away from wherever they've come from. Peter, thanks so much for coming in, mate. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Trent.
Let's talk about Good Life for a second. We don't plug companies on the podcast. There's no marketing or advertising, which I think people love. We don't waste any time listening to those things, but I think it's important just to get an understanding of what does a business like yours do? How does it operate? Day to day, what are you doing as a job?
Sure. Good Life Structures was formed nearly 4 years ago. We started just selling little small houses in backyards, pool houses, little spa rooms, offices, etc. Tiny homes. Took off, I suppose, a little bit more when COVID came along. People were conscious about working from home, so that sort of gave us a bit more leverage in the product. We do manufacture and distribute Australia-wide. Flat packs was predominantly the business, and then over time it grew with people asking questions of house shortages, affordability. So we went in and did some investigation on what people are wanting, low budget cost homes, of course, and then we developed that with our factory in Europe, and we've made them to Australian standards, and we still deliver them in the same way in flat pack, ship them over here, and predominantly most people are calling us up to build in their backyards.
Yeah, it sounds like part of the Australian life these days is to consider a pool and or a granny flat, right?
Correct.
And when we think about how expensive it's getting for young people and old people to get in their home or downsize out of that house they're in, the granny flat seems to be part of the solution. The state government, through John Kerry's initiatives, have made it easier with the planning reforms in 2024 to make it work financially and also from a red tape perspective. At least on the front end, they're saying, look, you don't need planning approval anymore. You just need a building approval. We'll talk about the realities of that in a minute. And also, if you can put a granny flat that's 70 square meters or smaller in your backyard, we'll give you a concession on the zoning minimum land size to maybe even let you subdivide that land off. Has that made a bit of a difference in terms of the inquiry and ability for you to actually go and do some work supplying these places in people's backyards?
Certainly, Trent, with John and the government initiating the 60 square metre regulation to build in the backyard without any planning approval, certainly sped up the opportunity for our company's growth. But I think more importantly, what's really important to me and to our company is that people who are desperately wanting some kind of accommodation, affordable and quicker than the traditional build in the backyard, and is where I'm trying to focus on, because I come from an Italian background. Europeans are generally building on top of each other. That's something that's never changed and continued on, and I think Australians now are in the same situations where a lot of people would like to have a place in the backyard for mum and dad and vice versa. So we're getting that inquiries and we're trying to make that easier for them, affordable, and I think it's starting to work for us.
You mentioned the motivators there, time and money, which is, to be frank, motivation for a lot of decisions we make in investment in our lives. Now, time, let's talk about that for a second. Let's say I rocked up at your office. I said, look, I've got the money. I'm ready to go. I've decided straight away on the product choice. We could talk about them in a second. From that conversation, how quickly could you get me a livable, handed over granny flat in my backyard? What's reasonable?
Ideally, if we don't have any interruptions with the local council on the particular address, from start to finish, I would say within 6 months you can move in.
Let's say that we have the usual issues with the local government. What's probably your median time frame?
I say 6 months for a reason, because by the time you put an order in a standard design, we can start manufacturing it within 4 weeks and load it up. So it's generally a shipping time of 70 to 80 days. So within that time, all being well and love and more, the council approvals will be done. Then we have our guys come in and make sure that the site's ready to be built. Generally speaking, we just put a concrete pad or a joister bearer. Customers have their land generally ready. We don't get involved too much in that. It really depends on the actual council. Some councils require extra car parking, which I know Mr. Carey in conversation in the past has said that shouldn't be happening, and we're hoping that does get looked at again, because people are already living in the house and they're trying to have more space. So the daughter wants to move at the back, or the son, rather than renting a house, renting at the back of mum. So that shouldn't really change. So those things I think still need to be worked on. But generally 6 months I think we're pretty comfortable with.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now you've detailed out that first 3 months is essentially getting the flat pack product manufactured and delivered to site. The next 3 months, that's just fit out with local tradies?
No, I guess the length of the time process is probably the 5 months from order to delivery, because unfortunately with the Israel war and so forth, the shipping lines have to take longer to get here. Normally, traditionally, was no more than 65, 70 days. It could now be 80 to 90. We just say to people, look, 5 months it's delivered, then a 4 to 6 week process to be built, turnkey, moved in.
You've got a building team that
Yes.
are assisting there with the handover from the flat pack to the finished structure.
Correct.
Okay. Now, those would be your painter, your tiler, your floorer, your cabinet maker, your sparky.
All still local tradies. We're still buying local product in a way. It's the rest of it, the actual structural building is manufactured in Europe, and that's why the costs of the building is reasonable as opposed to buying the same material here.
Okay, so I think people would be pretty happy with that 6 month turnaround for anything, these days especially. Let's move to price. What we know about housing in general, not just the modular space, but housing in general, is it's gone up in price by about 60 to 70% for anything since COVID, which really starts to price out a lot of young people looking to build their own home, or a lot of older people looking to downsize into a smaller home, and it's just inflated the established market. We know that with replacement cost theory. I assume, as I've said, that the modular space hasn't avoided that cost increase. Talking off air, we've spoken about the pricing, and one thing that I guess is the most surprising to me is it's actually not that expensive to get the flat pack delivered to Perth. It's the rest. It's the trades essentially in Western Australia that are really building up most of that price. Can you give me an average example of a general granny flat, 60, 70 square meter granny flat that you're going to deliver? What the price is of the product plus the price is of all the trades, and what that would look like?
Sure, Trent. So a 60 square metre, which is our most popular one, starts from about 58,000 from the factory delivered to Perth. So what that entails is basically all the structural components of the building, the timber, the flooring, the ceiling, the windows, the doors. Pretty well, you put it up to lock up.
So you've got a shed at this point, essentially?
Correct. With a twin system, dual wall system, or whatever you want to call it, that people understand. You run your insulation that we buy here. Now that 58,000 as a starting point. A turnkey at 60 square metres, you should be get away for around 170 on a pretty straightforward development block at the backyard.
So a fairly simple, modest spec?
Yep. Simple, most spec.
And what would be an average spec if we weren't doing state housing spec? We were doing the same spec of a new home in or Ellenbrook. What would that probably be ticking up to?
We definitely would keep it under 200,000. We haven't been asked a lot for up-speccing. I think people are just wanting
utility.
A utility, a solution for either the children or the mum and dad.
That's pretty eye-opening to think that the product itself, round numbers, is getting in my backyard for 60 grand. And then it's costing me another 110 to 140 grand to pay the plumber, the sparky, the cabinet maker, the tiler, the floorer to make the shed into a home. And I guess that probably speaks to the realities of building a house, let alone a flat pack these days, that most of the cost of a home is not the material itself, it's paying someone to put it in.
Yep.
I guess there's not a lot more we can do about it in that space. I mean, you're providing a solution here that's as cost effective as it can get for a roof over your head and as time effective as it can get. And we're still seeing the price being 3 times that delivery of the product itself to be able to finish it. So it costs double to finish the product than it does to deliver the product. That's pretty insane, isn't it, Peter?
It is when we're shipping it from the other side of the world. There's people working on that factory I was all being paid and doing a great job and packing it all up and all the materials of the cost of the timber and so forth. And then sailing it here is not cheap because shipping has gone up since COVID. To bring here, but the biggest problem we have in Australia in general is the cost of labour, and I can't do it any other way because shipping them in already made is going to cost more, and the red tape of the new changes that have come on board now with more energy efficiencies that the government have put on us, which is a cost to every builder moving forward, is put the cost up even more.
So what are some examples there where last year or the year before it was a few grand cheaper?
Yes.
And now, why is
Now they've got the new energy efficiency laws that have come in that's been passed right across Australia. WA was the last of the bastions to fight it, but unfortunately politics comes in and the state government had to bow down with the rest of Australia's new laws, which have basically now is going to cost an average home between anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 on an average of more to comply.
But what are these new regulations? What are the new things that need to be put in?
Better glass, better windows, more insulation requirements. They're trying to get more energy efficiency in the building, which I do understand, but some of it wasn't probably necessary to keep the cost up when you're trying to deliver a low budget product as it is.
Yeah, it's increasing the minimum threshold. It's gold plating the minimum threshold of a roof over someone's head. And if you ask them, would you rather have a gold plated roof over your head or live in the car? I'm pretty sure I know what the answer would be for most people if that was the decisioning.
And we have that asked a number of times, why do we have to spend this kind of money? Because we certainly don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing. Now, one thing that's bearing to mind here is that pre-COVID, as a developer, I would be instigating new 4x2s in the backyard that were 200 square meters with a project builder, turnkey, for 200 grand. It's insane to think, isn't it, the inflation of costs here, where we could have a double brick 200 square meter home for $200,000. Now we're talking about a flat pack, multi-wall, 60 square meter home for essentially the same price. I guess what it talks to at the end of the day is that people aren't getting that much richer in that time frame, and this is a basic need. They're not going to stop buying a roof over their head, but what it means is people will start turning more and more to these alternative solutions. If they can't afford the double brick home from Dal Alcock or Home Group or whoever it is now, because that's now $380,000 to $400,000 for that, well, their budget's still $200,000. I guess they come into products like this in the back of their parents' house.
Without a doubt, Trent. Most of our inquiries now are exactly that. I've got my daughter who's been renting for $800 a week or $700 a week and simply can't go anywhere further and can't afford to buy a house for $500,000 or $600,000.
Doesn't have the deposit.
Doesn't have the deposit. So I've got plenty of room at the back, and one day I can move at the back and my daughter can take the front house. And I just think that's going to be a trend moving forward. And the fact of life is that costs have gone up. They ain't going to go back. And in America, they're now introducing 1 to 2 bedroom houses for people to move in as a starting point. As you mentioned, the 4x2 was a standard house that you'd buy in Warnbro or somewhere in subdivision there that you could afford to buy for $350. That's gone. So you build a 2x1, and as you progress in life, you get into a bigger house. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing here as well.
Do you think that there are many people buying the granny flat with a consideration that this is actually a good financial decision as well? Are there many people buying it to invest, going, I can make $1 out of this? Or is it mainly people trying to house their family?
It's a good point. I would have thought it was an investment to start off with, like we have sold. We have a couple of real estate agents that have customers that have houses and they want to build granny flats to get maximum value. I think that's also achievable and it seems to be working. But predominantly now it's people are saying, well, I really need to do something for my children, or I need to move there and my children to move at the front. So I think it's getting more popular in that than actually someone saying it's investment, but definitely does create investment. I think that you might not think so, but I do believe that.
Yeah, for me, I'm not a huge fan from a financial point of view on the granny flat. It's like buying the pool for me. If you're going to be getting a return on it, it better be bloody substantial. But some people, I think, do see the value in just creating that extra cash flow out the back, given there's a cost. Despite the fact that there obviously is a $1,000 cost to do that, I think it would have worked a lot better at $100,000 or $120,000 pre-COVID for these granny flats. But the rent's also gone up by a similar factor as well, so that's considerable. But I think at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, this is, as we've said, starting to become a reality for the solution. The reason that we were talking about this on the radio on 6PR a few weeks ago, the reason that you jumped on the line as a caller, is because I'd gone and recently toured a modular home fabricator in Malaga, a business called Fox Modular. Well respected, I'm sure you know that brand as well. And they do a lot of work in the southwest, in the northwest as well, where it's just not feasible to, they just aren't builders in the first place, let alone the time frames and delays. People just need that solution. Now it's easier to build it in Malaga in a warehouse and drive it down than it is to find a builder who can bring some trades. That's pretty understandable these days in a lot of these country towns, and I think will continue to be. These guys are booming in terms of their yard. But the reality is they're charging the price to deliver one of these places for a 200 square metre home. Remember, it was costing $200,000 for a 200 square metre home 5 years ago. A modular one delivered down south is $800,000. That's essentially double the square metre rate of a brick and tile house in Ellenbrook. I would posit that it's really not part of our broad-based solution to solving our housing crisis. It's certainly going to be a panacea for those people struggling to keep up with the market and just need a roof over their head, and I think that's where you provide a fantastic service to broadening the supply options. But there's no way that anyone could argue to me successfully that this is going to replace double brick. This is going to replace even just steel frame construction from double brick as well. When you're charging $800,000 for that same home to deliver it with the benefit of it being maybe 6 months quicker off-site, I would have thought that most rational decision makers, young families, are going, hang on a sec, that's double what I'm going to get charged from the project builder. I'm definitely not going to do that. Would you agree that this probably isn't, at the moment at least, with the cost structures we've got, is not our broad-based solution for fixing our housing crisis?
No, without a doubt. And no offence to Fox or anyone in the modular business, they're just meeting the market. And that's all it is. It's not the answer. It doesn't help. I don't think it helps us as what we're trying to achieve. I certainly think at $800,000 I could deliver a far better product for less price than that. But I think they've got the market. They've been there longer than what we have. But it's definitely not the future. The future is what we're trying to achieve is low-cost product. And we manufacture on site, which is, I think, also very important because having cranes and trucks and all that, there's a big cost.
There's a cost to that.
We sell to country, so people buy the product and try and build it themselves, or we offer that service for our tradies to go and build it because the simple fact, again, Trent, 4 or 5 weeks, it's done. So my guys stay there overnight.
It's like the block.
Correct.
Now, you've spoken to me about alternative construction products for wall systems and that coming out of America. Can you share a bit of information about what we might see in 10, 15 years, what's starting to become more prevalent in terms of construction material? It's
Sure.
not just double brick, it's not just timber or steel. What else is coming out of these countries that we look at and go, well, that's a bit futuristic?
Yeah, since the development of this company, I've really taken a liking to seeing what we can actually do outside of what we're currently doing. As I said before, I think modular is the future. Certainly in Perth, we're all double brick people. We've had this conversation, you and I, on a number of occasions since. Everyone thinks double brick, hit the wall. If it ain't solid, it's not double brick. And I know that's how it was sold many years ago. Great marketing tool for Midland Brick at the time. But the world's changed. And again, it's changed for a number of reasons. And we're all got younger children. They want things done fast. They're on the phone. They want to put an order in. And housing down the track is going to be exactly that. People will want to make decisions to have things done quick. Double brick's never going to be the answer.
So what
that.
is the solution that's not only fast, but at some point in the future will be cheap?
Correct.
So it can compete with double brick, because people will stay with double brick until you can offer them a solution that's 20-30% cheaper. Yep. What is that solution?
Some of the systems that are coming that I'm bringing in, which will come from America, the cost comparison will be slightly cheaper. It won't be 30% cheaper because it all goes back down to our cost of putting them up.
Yep.
The beauty about some of these new products that's been designed in America with the biggest home builder in America, partnered up with our company, producing a wall system that doesn't require forklifts, doesn't require cranes. The wall system, once it's connected, is earthquake-proofed, cyclone-rated. The installation is way off the grid, and that simple wall system doesn't require anything else on it.
So what's the product we're talking about here? What's the material? I'm looking at it being put up. How would I liken it to it? Is it a foam system? Is it a rubber system? Is it carbon fibre? Is it plastic? What is it?
It's a carbon fibre skin inside and out, and the traditional foam installation, which is different to the cool room.
Yeah, it's not styrofoam. Obviously, it's not blowing away. It's a very tough and dense
Correct. They're
material.
currently being trialled in highly hurricane areas in the States at the moment. As I said, the largest builder in America builds 150,000 houses, and his biggest problem is time. It takes too long. So he's engineered this product, which will reduce the time.
So I've seen videos on YouTube where people are building houses out of essentially extremely dense and heavy foam building blocks, like Lego blocks, essentially.
Very heavy.
Are we talking about that stuff or a different
No.
thing?
2 people puts the house up, including the roof. doesn't need any assistance from machinery. That's what makes it different to what that's ever been seen so far in Australia, because the rest of I've imported these other products that are heavy, certainly achievable in terms of time, but not necessarily that are cost effective because I need a crane and it takes time.
And a shipping container.
Yeah, and it's just sluggish. It's sluggish. Yeah, this is a new product yet to be seen, which I think is exciting for the lower end market and for the governments to build state housing at a very quick rate.
Are you talking to the state government about
Currently,
this?
yes.
How are they responding to it?
Yeah, look, they're very keen because they've got a massive shortage. When just on your program the other day, we're now talking 50,000 houses short.
And it's costing them a lot.
Yes.
The reality is homes that Mr. Kerry's housing department are paying for are
Well, they're
off
buying
a
from the
Richter scale.
yeah, they're buying off the modular homes that are already very busy and who are charging
Expensive.
800,000.
So us taxpayers are paying ridiculous prices just to get, to be frank, immaterial numbers of a difference being made right now. What we need is scale difference.
Correct.
We need to change the ball game, and I guess that comes down with fast modular systems, but not only that, they need to be able to be cost effective. We can't just be trading time for money. That's not going to help.
But that's what's happening now, and I agree with you. We need to change that.
Peter, I thank you so much for your time, mate. It's a conversation I've wanted to have for a while, and it's one that I've found very insightful, not only to understand where the opportunities are, but also to put my thumb down on where the solutions are and aren't right now. It's clearly not going to be coming from modular to solve our problems right now. It's not coming from build to rent. All these things that the government keeps pushing is the solution. They don't stack up. To hear about some new products that might be able to come in the very near future, I'd like to see them getting tested. If it can be financially competitive, and certainly it will be time competitive, then let's see what we can achieve.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Trent. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!